what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
This podcast is sponsored by the 2019 Footcandle Film Festival. This year's film festival will be held September 27th through 29th in Hickory, North Carolina. Learn more by visiting footcandlefilmfestival.com.
Footcandle Films. Film news and reviews from two guys who really like movies.
This episode is brought to you by the Footcandle Film Society. For a schedule of upcoming screenings and membership information, visit the Society's website at www.footcandle.org.
Hello and welcome to Footcandle Films here on themesh.tv. My name is Alan Jackson. I am co-director, co-founder of the Footcandle Film Society and Footcandle Film Festival. With me is Chris Fry, also co-director and co-founder of the same aforementioned organization. So, Chris, how are you doing today?
Doing good. Should be an interesting discussion today. Two movies that are exactly the same, so it's going to be challenging to
It's going to be hard to tell them apart
Yes.
in our reviews because, I mean, the plot and characters are just so incredibly similar in tone and style.
Exactly.
We are joking, of course. I think these films are probably about as polar opposites as we can get, which is something we kind of tend to do on the film.
We do.
The review show here when
Not
we have two films. No, we don't really plan for it, but it just kind of works out. I think maybe we kind of balance out our own taste of films we want to see at any given time. So in a particular week, we normally see a couple films that happen to be very different from one another, just to kind of keep us on our toes and mix it up a little bit. Today is no exception. We will be reviewing two films for you in the first half of the show. First up will be It, Chapter 2. This is the sequel, as you can probably tell from the title, to the aforementioned It from the previous, I believe, about maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Yeah, you can't 2017.
Right.
So, yeah.
Directed by Andy Muschietti. And then we'll be moving on to The Farewell. This is Lulu Wang's film starring Awkwafina, telling the story of a real-life family situation with her Chinese relatives. So, Chris, we'll be doing those two reviews, then we'll move into some movie news, and then we'll end up the show with our recommendations of the episode. This is where you and I both share a film that we feel like maybe is worth checking out again or revisiting, or it could be a smaller film that hasn't gotten a lot of attention. We want to make sure people have a chance to see or recognize. So, Chris, if you're ready to start, we will jump right into our first review, which will be It, Chapter 2.
To the losers.
We made an oath.
I swear. If it isn't dead, if it ever comes back, we'll come back to it.
We didn't stop it.
All right, so Chris, start us off. If Chapter 2.
Keith Phipps, a co-host of the Next Picture Show podcast, mentioned on a recent episode discussing the 80s film Clue that there's no such thing as a bad idea for a movie, only bad execution. With It, Chapter 2, director Andy Muschietti continues his idea of making a movie based on a popular novel while employing certain creative tweaks. Unlike the book It, which interwove past and present storylines at the same time, Muschietti's 2017 focused on the central characters solely as young kids. 2019's It, Chapter 2 focuses primarily on the characters 27 years later as grown-ups with some flashbacks. Following the theory from Phipps, diverging from the source material is not a bad idea for a movie. What is your opinion of Muschietti's execution?
Oh boy, that's a loaded question. Execution, and let me go ahead and preface this when I talk about this film. I realize that there's two lenses you can look at this film in. Sure. Well, actually three. One is what I'm going to try really hard to do, which is look at it as a film on its own.
Sure.
But obviously, it is a sequel to a film that's not too far back, time-wise, just like a year and a half or so. And then, of course, you've got the source material of the book. So I'm going to try not to think about it in terms of the book. And I'm going to try really hard not to think about it in terms of the first film. So when I do that, this movie's pretty bad, I think. Now, as a companion piece with the first film, I actually think it improves. But I think there's some problems in the second chapter here by itself that make this a much more difficult film than the first one was. So execution, I think, is a big problem, kind of going back to your question. I think you've got a great story. You've got some great characters. You've got really good actors in this second installment because you have now grown-up adult actors. I mean, Jessica Chastain, Bill Heder, who am I missing here? James McAvoy. I mean, some really good actors mixed in here. But I felt like this movie was just trying to throw everything it could to pack in as much of what I'm assuming the original novel, but yet never going deep enough on anything to where really anything had any true stakes or had any true impact. It was long. I think it suffered from not having our main characters really spend a lot of time together, which is part of the thing I think the first film really was stronger in that the kids spent a lot of time together. And more than anything, from the execution standpoint, it just wasn't scary. I didn't find this film scary at all. And I've got a lot of reasons why. I've got some very specific examples. But overall, I was very disappointed by this. I felt like it did not – I liked the first chapter. I was one of the ones who I think I liked it better than you did.
Yep.
Where I liked it. I thought it was fun. I thought it was slightly scary in places. I had some issues with it, but overall I gave it a favorable score. This one, I can't do that to. I just feel like this one takes what was wrong with the first one, with the problems in the first one, amplifies them so much to where I honestly was watching the clock about halfway through the film. I can pinpoint exactly the part in the film where I just lost interest. So, yeah, I've got a lot to pick apart with this. So I'm anxious to hear your thoughts because I know you weren't the biggest fan of the first It. So I'm anxious to see, did this do anything at all for you, or are you on the same page with me?
No, I think I'm definitely on the same page. It would be interesting to see, not that it really matters overall, but like what you would end up putting on Letterboxd, your star rating, if mine is actually above or below it. And the reason I say that is because, yes, I was not a fan of the first movie, thought it had some problems, thought it was less than okay, but I did like a few things about it. This was like diminishing returns, which is sad because that already started off pretty low and it just continues to go down. Probably didn't help. And unless you don't go to the movie theater, you did see the trailers prior to this film coming out. And the one that was just the scene with Jessica Chastain, that was really impressive. I was like, wow, this is kind of doing some of the stuff that the first movie didn't do, that I wanted to have some stuff. And the thing is, when that scene plays out in the movie, it's completely ruined. And basically a lot of the problems that I had were this film, I felt like it was a little bit more of an adult version because you have swear words and stuff and some people getting killed. But it's like an adult version of Beetlejuice. And that was really disappointing, especially considering, unlike the TV show, which granted, you let the movie stand on its own, but the book had come first and the Tim Curry starring It TV show or TV miniseries had come out. And, I liked that. I've never revisited it. I realize it's probably really cheesy now. Some of what's probably cheesy about it is the fact that they had to do effects with what they had to do and how they carried that off. In this movie, we live in the world where you can do Harry Potter and all this kind of stuff that's really fancy. And it's not like it's a TV movie. They have the budget. And it was just disappointing that it still looked ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, ridiculous and ridiculous not in a scary way.
Well,
and,
that's my biggest issue with the scares is that this movie relies so much on computer animated creatures and effects that are not scary. Right. They're actually more comical. And it ruins some of the better moments of the film where I felt like the film actually had something going on. You mentioned the scene with Jessica Chastain that was in the trailer. I'm with you. Watching that trailer got me excited for this film. So I'm like, okay, if that's the tone we're going for, I'm on board. I'm ready to go. And that scene plays out in the film, and it's good in the movie too. Like it's building, and it's like, I'm ready. Let's do this. And then the moment that we see the conclusion of this scene and where it leads to, I mean, honestly, I was just kind of taken aback. I'm like, really? That's really where they're going with this? And it was just ridiculous. And now again, I'm not going to reference the book. I know the book has a lot more kind of creature mythology and some of the things that are lifted straight from the book, but it just did not translate the way they decided to do it in the film, in the execution here. So, yeah, the best moments of the film were ones that were just severely undercut by some horrible animated creatures or just jump scares. I mean, this whole movie is like the only thing that I found myself waiting for in the film and thinking, okay, here it comes, is a jump scare. There was never anything frightening. There was never anything disturbing. There was never anything that like upset me. It was all just, okay, I know you're in a dark room and it's building and there's silence for 70 seconds. Something's going to jump out. So I'm just waiting for it to jump out. Oh, there it jumped out. Okay, good. Now move on to the next scene. That's not the way a good horror movie should work. So I didn't find a single thing scary in this film. I'm sorry, a giant computer animated Paul Bunyan statue stomping through a park. There's nothing scary about it. Yeah. There's nothing scary about it. Right. Now, could you have made it scary? Oh, yeah, there's absolutely ways you could have made that because I'm sure that was in the book. That was something, a vision that was probably seen. I know there's ways to make it scary. The way it was presented in this film was nothing at all scary.
Well, it's like they needed to take a page from the X-Files, and which was a TV series which often used darkness to make things scary, and it's what you didn't see that made things scary. And even more recent films like It Follows and stuff, sometimes it was just like the dread of what was coming, and then they didn't try to over CGI things. Right. And that's that was really my problem with this, is that they showed you everything, and that was kind of to a detriment. There's a scene where there's a confrontation, Eddie's confrontation in a pharmacy cellar. Yeah, the build-up was great. But then once the actual confrontation happens, silly. Just really silly.
That was my other scene I was going to point out. I loved the build-up to that scene.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not giving away too much, but it's, in a, like you said, pharmacy basement. It involves kind of his mother, and there's this real tension building. There's something underneath a kind of a sheet that's kind of inching closer and closer, and it's really kind of a good tense scene. And then when the sheet comes off and the scene concludes, it's the same way as the previous scene I was talking about. It just ended comically. And there was a weird music moment in that scene too. Do you recall that?
Yes.
It was like really Eddie's, all right, I'll just go ahead and say, he's having stuff kind of vomited on him by some creature.
Right.
And for the 5 or 6 seconds that happened, they're playing Call Me Angel, Juice Newton, right? For no reason. Like, what was the point of that? There's no other popular music drops, and it just completely undermined what could have been a very terrifying scene. But with the animated creatures and then that kind of dropping in humor for really inappropriate reasons, the tone of the film was just all over the place.
You started off... we've basically we've been
railing on it. I got some positives to say, but yeah.
And so I want to say, a couple of positives. I agree that I think Bill Heder as Ed, no, he's which kid is he? As the kid that he plays, yeah, they do. Richie, thank you. As Richie Tozier or whatever, he's good.
Well, he's funny, but his character's meant to be funny. Richie was funny in the original one as a young kid. Bill Heder played it for laughs.
But he also played, which is in the book, like damaged, and so he did. I thought he did a pretty good job. He was good. I liked him. Being damaged. Mm-hmm. Like you said, Jessica Chastain being Bev. I thought she was good, and I think it. I still am a big supporter, even though I really liked Tim Curry as Pennywise. I did. I know, like, if I go back and watch it now, it doesn't hold up. I think you've mentioned
how it doesn't hold up. He actually is fine.
Okay.
It's just the rest of the movie doesn't hold up. But I think Tim Curry still, is a classic Pennywise.
And Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise, I think is amazing. Yeah. Any problems with that? Like, I do not lay at his feet. I think he's really good. He has the look. He has the physicality. He has, when the few lines that he does get to deliver, he's very menacing with them. There's one where he, shortly after the Beetlejuice CGI woman has the confrontation with Miss Kirsch, has that with Beverly, she kind of sees Pennywise in a state kind of from his past a little bit. And, so that gives Bill Skarsgård a chance to actually look semi-normal. And I thought he did really well in that, too. Yeah. I think for me, so other than the performances I've kind of called out, and this is going to sound kind of strange, and I'll try to explain it. instances where they let creepy be scary worked. For example, there's a bleacher scene with a little girl. There's a scene kind of towards the beginning of the film where a couple is jumped by thugs at a fair and ends up in one of them being in the water, and then Pennywise kind of lurks from the side of the riverside. And that
was probably the creepiest scene in the film.
And they don't overdo these things. They're just kind of there, and they let creepy be scary.
Didn't need a jump scare.
Nope. Which they could have used, and jump scares are fine.
Well, and there was a little bit of the jump scare with the girl under the bleachers. But the build-up was actually really good.
And it was fun, and then they didn't just, it was the way they did it, whereas the instances, I'm using air quotes, which doesn't work for a podcast, scary instances fell flat. And like we've already mentioned, the Miss Kirsch part, Spider Pennywise, Eddie's confrontation in the cellar, and something else. If you would have just minimalized it, the fortune cookie scene, okay? Yeah. And I'll defend it a little bit. Well, I'll defend about maybe 30% of it. That idea is in the book.
Sure.
That idea was in the TV series.
Yeah.
But actually, what's pathetic to me is that in the TV series, they kind of carried off because I guess they couldn't really do a lot, so they just have like the fortune cookies crawl around a little bit, and it's weird, and it sets everybody on edge, and everybody gets kind of freaked out. They weren't seemingly content to do that here. They really had to go over the top. And it just got sillier and sillier and sillier. And it's just, tone, script.
Well, that moment right there is kind of the moment where I kind of checked out and said, all right, I know where this film's going. Because honestly, I'm digging the first 20 minutes of this film.
Okay. So the phone call part.
The phone call. Yes, it's repetitive where, you have Stanley. Mike calling everybody because things are happening. But I liked kind of catching up where everybody was and their personal lives, and everybody's response to it was interesting.
Like you say, it was pretty impressive because, and I've heard some people deride it for being kind of repetitive, but I thought it was actually well done.
And actually, when they all converged at the restaurant, I like the dynamics there because it's like they're all having, they're kind of, you're starting to realize as an audience member, they don't remember exactly what happened. And it's slowly starting to come to them. And they actually play that really well. It's like they're all starting to, this sense of dread is now starting to creep in. Then when it hits the fortune cookies and it goes completely CGI, cartoonish, I'm like, okay, I'm afraid you've now lost me, film. So I'm checked out. I will say this. Let me get some good notes in here.
Okay.
I thought the cinematography is gorgeous. I thought the looks of the shots, the layouts, the way the shots were framed were wonderful. Unfortunately, you've got these beautifully creepy scenes and settings that are just undermined by how they actually play out the scene.
Sure.
But the look of it is gorgeous. Down in the sewers, the houses that they have to go down into. I mean, it's some really well-shot things. Just unfortunately didn't lead to anything really positive in the rest of the film. I did think that I agree with you about Bill Heder. I thought the score was good. The music was good. I liked the music throughout the entire film. I thought it was very... it was big, and it was...
and they borrowed some of the themes or some of the sound from the first movie, but it worked because it's continuity.
Absolutely it worked. And one other positive I'll give the film, as tempting as I'm sure it was for the film's financiers or producers or whatever, to do something at the end that kept an open door or led to what may be a potential sequel or to give some little last-minute little thing, they didn't do it. Right. They closed the film out. The film has a true ending. I mean, it absolutely ends. It rolls to credits, and it's an ending. And I admire that in any kind of franchise-type movie these days. Because, unfortunately, I read the news. They're already talking about how they make a third one out of this.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Of course they're going to.
Goodness.
But I love the fact that the film ends. It's just there's no
this movie was all a dream by one of the losers. And so then the third film will actually be good?
I don't know. Maybe. That would be a little bit of a saving grace to it. But, yeah, the fact that it ended. It's like, yep, that's it. Done. Characters, here's where they all are. Here's where you are. Movies scroll credits. We're done. And that's refreshing. So I do give the film some props for doing that and not succumbing to the pressure of having Pennywise pop up one last time right before the credits start, and you kind of know that that's where it's leading to. Now that granted, they can still figure out a way to make sequels if they choose to, but I like the fact that it stands alone.
Here, I would agree. I'm glad the fact that seemingly you thought they had ended it, but they may make a third one. I'll say with the film too, in addition to the CGI, my other major gripe, it's not with the acting, it's not with the cinematography, it's not with the music, like all that you said. Something about script direction, specifically with the script and the direction. The script, it just tried to do too much, which I think you can tell because of the running time. The sidestep of the Native American backstory with Mike just slowed the progression of the story and was clunky and just really kind of confusing. The only reason I kind of knew a little bit what was going on is because I'd read the book.
Well,
and so I thought that was disingenuous because it just added stuff that didn't need to be there. And the artifact gathering also falls in that same thing. You were mentioning how it diminished for you. This film diminished because they split up the losers. And that's what that effectively did, and it just didn't.
Well, in each of those scenes, I still, like you said, I did not understand what their role was. Right. So I didn't understand, why are they collecting these artifacts? What is that supposed to do? What exactly is an artifact they're looking for? It seemed very haphazard and random.
Right.
And it just seemed like a reason of, let's just go have them each go do these little side adventures and have their own fears revealed, or whatever the scenes may be.
And the culmination of uniting all the artifacts doesn't really.
No, it didn't do anything. Didn't make any difference. What I got the impression of, Chris, is that they made the first one. They didn't know if the first one was going to be successful or not, so they wanted the first movie to be fairly standalone, which it was. It was all the kids,
except for the end of the credit scene where they said
they said if he ever comes back, we'll come back.
Chapter 2. Yeah.
But I think that may have been added again. Late in the process when they know the film's going to be pretty good.
Right.
But again, they made the story of the film be that it could stand alone. They didn't really dip into the mythology. They didn't dip into anything about who Pennywise is and why he's here or whatever. It's just, he's just pure feeds off of fear. Mm-hmm. That's all we care about. And the way we fight him is not to be afraid of him. Simple. It was a simple movie from a story standpoint. I kind of felt like they said, oh, good, it was a success. Now let's make number 2. Now we got to cram all that mythology stuff in here, but we don't really want the film to get overloaded with all that. So let's just do enough to recognize it and give people a little taste of it. But we're going to spend more time just on these other little scary things we want to do. So it's like, it didn't give full service to it. It's like, if you're going to go that route, you kind of need to go full tilt and just explore it and let us understand what it's all about. But instead of seem more content to just say, we're going to give you a very high level quick summary, and then just trust us. Everybody has to go do these things, and there's a reason for it. You don't need to ask why. Just go with it, I heard someone on a review after I kind of created my notes. It was nice to hear other people kind of feeling the same way. This film, I know length is always an issue, but this is a story that needed to be a true miniseries. 6-8 episodes, 6 or 8 hours spread out with breaks and that's the way this story needs to be told, because there's a lot of dense material you could go into.
Right.
And to give each person some true time to have some depth and background story. I think just trying to cram so much of the story into this, granted, it was already long, 2 hours and 40 minutes, 45 minutes, but it still felt like they crammed so much in. And that was just the big problem for me. And unfortunately, to me, it was a big letdown from the first one, because I think the first one was at least a lot tidier. It was a little more efficient. It kind of knew what story it wanted to tell. And it did it. And was it completely successful? No, but I thought it was good entertainment. This one got to beyond entertainment. It's purely like drudgery, just trying to get through, and was frustrating. And, like I got to ask, okay, there's the very first scene of the film, we have an attack.
Yes.
That happens, a homophobic attack.
Yes.
Brutal.
Yes.
Tough to watch. It was the first 10 minutes of the film. Granted, it did lead to what I agree was a very creepy scene in the water under the bridge underneath it.
Right.
That was good. Mm-hmm. But I don't understand why we needed that brutal attack to get to that point.
Well, and the reason you don't understand that is because somewhere between, they're trying to cram, I think, it's double-edged sword. They were trying to be too loyal to the book, which was where a lot of the stuff got crammed in the script. Basically, from what I remember of the book, it's kind of trying to show you how Derry inherently rots people.
Okay.
And just rot. And so what it was trying to show you is like, okay, all these years later, 27 years later, there's this fair in Derry, and these people come back. One is from New York, and then one guy actually had lived in Derry, so they come back and they're going to the fair. And just the homophobic hatred and all, you're like, wow, this is really dark, really upsetting. And then you realize, like, yeah, Pennywise has never left. That it's just this rotting festering.
And that makes sense.
Right, it does, but it's not communicated
But there's
well.
nothing following up on that in the film. All we see a bunch of violent homophobes do a horrific act, and then that's it. They're done. You know, I mean, there's no other mention about in the film that the rest of Derry is being like rotting and infected and evil, whatever. We get none of that. Well, it's almost like Pennywise just happens to be under the bridge. It's like, oh, look, hey, somebody just happened to fall down. I'll take care of that one. You know?
Right. So. And then the pulling in from the first film, now granted, I saw it once. I did not revisit it. Actually, that's not true. I did see it twice because one of my kids wanted to watch it. So we watched it at home. So I guess I did see it twice, but it faded from memory. Not a favorite movie of mine. But they pulled back in a thread from the first movie about the guy who was basically like being used as a tool by Pennywise and by the evilness in Derry, and he like kills his family. And then this one, he comes back in and is like stalking around. That to me, there again, just didn't work.
Well, it didn't go anywhere.
Didn't go anywhere.
I mean, we still don't even really know what happened to him later in the film. He vanished. He's gone. So, yeah, I felt like they felt like in this second chapter, they needed to cram in a lot of things, and they did.
Oh, yes.
And they crammed in too much. And the things that they did cram in, they didn't explore far enough to really make them meaningful. It was almost just a little bit of fan service. Mm-hmm. Speaking of fan service.
Oh, beep, Richie?
What?
Beep, Richie?
What's that?
Okay, that's a phrase that was in the original TV series that's in the book.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a taunt that Pennywise the Clown would do.
Oh.
And it came from out of nowhere. And Bev says it when they're like walking through the house. She's like, beep, Richie. And you're like, okay, that was pure fan service for no other reason. And that was like, oh, I know the fan service you're talking about. But it was so needle scratch because my kids were like, that's dumb. Why did she say? I'm like, well, there's a reason she said it, but you don't know it because it doesn't make any sense.
I think I was already so bored with the film at that point. I didn't really pay attention.
You checked out. You're talking about the guy who was selling the bike back to, oh, yeah.
I mean, we had a couple odd cameos. Now, granted, yeah, that cameo, the bike salesman, you get why he's in there.
Oh, yeah.
But the whole illusion throughout the entire film about the ending of books, which is something that, Stephen King, the author, kind of has gotten a lot of criticism for.
Oh, yeah.
I get it. You want to make a joke once? Okay, make a joke once.
Yep.
They made it, I swear, 5 or 6 times during this film, at least.
Yeah.
And it was just beat you over the head with this idea.
Well, they had to make it 5 or 6 times to make enough running time. They were afraid this movie was only going to be like 30 minutes.
Well, and then I didn't understand, why is Peter Bogdanovich in the film as a film director in the early part?
I mean, funny, but yeah, I don't.
It was just random.
I don't know. It's a movie reference.
Yeah, if the movie's a better movie, I can kind of take that and be like, oh, that's interesting. But after about 2 hours and 45 minutes, I'm looking back in that scene like, why? What?
Well, at least
what was it even there for?
Stephen King, spoiler, he does make a cameo.
He's in the film.
At least Peter Bogdanovich was rather short.
It was very short.
I thought where Stephen King's was a little more played out.
I don't know. It was just odd choices. Odd choices in the film. That's a strange thing for me.
So I'll close out my thoughts by saying, and I know everyone's concerned about whether or not I will be willing to go see, apparently, It 3. Mm. Okay, here's my pitch for It 3 that I would actually put down my money and go see. Mm-hmm. It is actually a prequel to both of these films.
A prequel?
And it stars none of the kids. It stars none of the actors we've already seen. The only one who returns is Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise.
So like the
and it's kind of like his circus days and like the evil.
That would actually be interesting.
And I think like, okay, and then you can get into some of the Native American stuff and actually have it make sense. You can get into some of the other stuff and some of the backstory that they kept trying to cram in this one, actually try to explore.
Well, I tell you what too, make it super low budget.
Oh.
No computer animation.
Okay.
All right. Go small. Get a different director. No offense, Andy. I mean, I think, I see you are a talented vision director. I just think the story and the weight of this thing got away from you. And I think the use of CGI really damaged the film. Sure. But get a smaller film, make it smaller, make it a little more intimate, make it scary. Mm-hmm. But yes, absolutely. And take the Pennywise character explore the backstory of kind of how that developed. Because we saw, like in the apartment, some pictures.
Photos.
And granted, they could have been ones that were more dreamlike, made up for Bev to see.
She could have been hallucinating.
But there also could be some elements of the story there of like the human form that he took and how this creature adopted this human character, clown, to be the physical representation that all these kids see. Yeah, no, I like that. See, this is what Hollywood needs, people. They need us kind of feeding some ideas here. I love it. I'm on board. If I had money to finance Chris, I would finance that film right now.
Awesome.
The one other thing I'll just say, last little final point, just so I can get it off my notes and check my boxes. Not only did I not understand the mythology and why the characters were being told to do these things and what the rituals were going to be to destroy him and all that, I also never quite understood exactly what Pennywise's, for lack of a better word, powers were. Because here's a great example. All 6 of the characters go off on their little find my token Scooby-Doo mystery where I got to go find this whatever thing I'm supposed to get for this ritual.
Right.
And half of them are saying when they see these visions or they see these things that are terrifying them, like the Bill Heder character seeing the giant Paul Bunyan statue chasing him. He's sitting there saying, this isn't real. This isn't real. And he's like closing his eyes and telling himself this isn't real. And sure enough, he opens his eyes a little bit later. Yeah, it's all gone. But yet Eddie, who goes down into the cellar and has the encounter with the creature down there and gets vomited on, comes back up and he walks right by everybody else. And it's like he's covered in vomit. He's like, yep, I need to go clean up. So it's like, okay, so is it... But of course, if some people die when they encounter Pennywise, but then they seem to make it sound like everything's a dreamlike thing. I never quite understood like what the characters actually were seeing was real and what was not, because there were physical representations of things they were experiencing that they were still carrying on. If they got a limb torn off, that limb's torn off. I mean, it's gone, And then like if they get vomited on, they got vomited on. But yet other things that they're seeing, they're telling themselves it's not real and it's just in their head. And sure enough, that's the case. So again, the film was trying to do so much and never took the time to really help us understand why, what matters, what's important. And that's a real problem for me. I liked the first chapter because I felt like it was simpler. It was just, here's a clown that is the manifestation of fear and evil. It's some sort of creature. We don't really know, but that's not important. Let's just figure out how we stop it because he's killing people all throughout kids all throughout our town. Simple. That's it. That's all we need to know. This film threw simple out the door and just said, no, we're going to cram everything we can and let the audience, we're going to trust the audiences either smart enough to figure it out on their own or have read the book or aren't going to really pay attention. They just want to see funny and scary stuff. So anyway, that is it, Chapter 2. I feel like we've kind of bashed it enough. We gave a couple good points to it, and Chris had a wonderful idea for a prequel film, which I would not be surprised to hear in the next couple of weeks we come back on an episode and be like, oh, guess what? Somebody is actually doing it. So that is it, Chapter 2. It is still playing in theaters as of the time of this recording, directed by Andy Machete, and will probably be out for a while. It seems to be doing okay money-wise. Not as good as the first chapter started out. I don't think it'll make as much money as the first one, but it is still doing okay, and we'll see if it prompts discussions of another one in the near future or not. Chris, let's go ahead and move on to our second review, which is the film, very, very different film. It is the film The Farewell.
Please tell me. Your Nan is dying.
She doesn't know, so you can't say anything. The family thinks it's better not to tell her.
Why is that better?
Chinese people have saying, when people get cancer, they die.
We have to go to China.
Wedding is an excuse so everyone can see her.
He's my only cousin. Don't you think I should be there?
You can't hide your emotions. If you go, Nan will find out right away.
Really?
So, Chris, with Lulu Wang's The Farewell, we have a story that is, and I don't feel like I'm spoiling anything by saying this, that it is based on a true story. It's even kind of presented that in the very first frame, based on an actual lie, is the very first word.
It's one of the best taglines because it's on the poster and stuff, too.
So it is based on a truth. I'm not going to go into too much detail on the whole real story of it because I think it's a pretty fascinating story behind the film. But regardless, this film is based on something in Lulu Wang's her real life. She wrote this story. She presented this story first on NPR, I believe on, was it
This American
Life, as a story. So like a good 20-minute, I believe, radio story discussing and talking through it. Got a lot of attention. People really liked the story. So then that got enough energy to make the film from it. Chris, you and I have a belief system here on the show I believe we've covered in the past where some films are better as documentaries than acted films because we feel like sometimes the acted films don't go deep enough or they don't. We just could have been better served as a documentary. My question for The Farewell, knowing that this is a story, Lulu Wang's personal story that you can imagine her telling, in a amount of time over a radio program, and you're hearing it, and it's a very personal story, and it's very direct with her. Translating it to a film where you've got people acting, you've got characters you're having to build, and you've got a lead actress, Awkwafina in this case, playing a role, basically playing the Lulu Wang surrogate, from what I understand from the real story.
Right.
My question is this a film that is a worthwhile film to go see, or would you prefer that it just remain a story that's being told as an interpersonal story? Did it translate to a film in your mind? And do you think it captured this idea of a family situation in a way that was entertaining and informative to you?
The idea of making this as a documentary, that would be interesting. And it could be, I think it could be done. Would it have been better? I'm not sure.
Well, even just the idea of it being just a story being told,
right.
Someone sitting down and telling a story.
It could be done, and it might be, but I will say I think the story is better served as being a narrative film and being slightly fictionalized because, if for no other reason, more people are going to see it.
Yeah, true.
And I think the strength of this film is the fact that it is a glimpse into the Chinese culture and the family dynamics from a Chinese perspective. And if it was just this as an American family, then it all takes place in America, then maybe like a documentary, and it would be more like humorous, and then it'd be fine. But something about having it be narrative, and that way you can experience things, air quotes, firsthand because it's being fictionalized and you're following the lead characters. They're trying to deal with their feelings and how she's interacting with her family in China. So I don't know. In this instance, I guess I would say it's better served narratively as being instead of being a documentary.
Did you like the film?
I did.
Okay.
I did like the film. I thought what's interesting is you mentioned Awkwafina, who has gotten a lot of praise. She's a comedian. She does a lot of stand-up. She was in the film Crazy Rich Asians, which I caught, and I liked. Okay. She was in it, and she's this very outsized, loud person, and she used for comedic effect in that film. And so to see her in this film, and she has a really distinctive voice. Like you hear her talk and you're like, oh, and they before I even knew, Awkwafina, that's the character name that she uses for her stand-up. Before I even knew she was in this film, I heard her voice and I'm like, that's the girl from Crazy Rich Asians. I wasn't familiar with her stand-up, but I'm like, that's got to be the same person. There's no way it can't be. But for her it's like in this film that she really has to tamp herself way, way, way down. And that's impressive for me because she seems like somebody who just is always outsized. It'd be like telling Robin Williams or Eddie Murphy, okay, just play really...
Dial it down a little bit.
Dial it way down. Like you're normally at a 13. We need you to be at a 2. So that was impressive for me. But yet she still gives a pretty good performance. However, I will say... the person that you hear a little bit about, but for me, it was the one that kind of overshadows the whole process and it's her movie, which you'd think it was because it's, she's important, would be the grandmother or Nai. And she's just really, 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 really good.
That's Shuzhen Zhao playing her as a famous Chinese actress that my understanding is it took a little convincing to get her to take this part, to play the grandmother. But she was
I thought she was
great.
Really good.
Very good.
And so she was a lot of fun to watch. Also Lulu Wang, I think she's made some small films, some short films. I think she made one of the feature, but this was kind of her big putting it out there and, and the cinematography, the editing, the score and music were interesting how they were used. And it offered a lot more for me than what I thought I was getting into. I mean, I thought this was going to be your typical kind of out of Sundance, 70 or 80 or like 80 minutes, maybe almost 90. But it was going to be kind of quirky, kind of funny. Oh, look, isn't it funny? They lied about, you see the whole setup in the trailer and you're like, okay, I can totally tell how this is going to feel.
Sure.
And it was actually a lot more meat on the bones than what I was expecting.
No, there's a lot more. I really like this film as well. I thought it was great. I enjoyed it. It's one of those films we show twice at our film society. I kind of regretted not watching this one a second time and instead going off to the theater to see it, Chapter 2. But so this would have been a good second one to watch a second time. I'm with you on Awkwafina. I thought she was really good. I thought she put in a great performance. I really liked the grandmother character, Nai as well. Really, all the characters. I thought the characters were all interesting. And I love the fact that this film could have gone so broad.
Yes.
It could have gone
Which is what I was expecting.
Where the characters were all caricaturish and just kind of over the outlandish characters, all not really slapstickish, but a little more manic comedy. And they didn't. It was very subdued.
Kind of what Crazy Rich Asians was.
It was very subdued. The characters were real. I mean, she's got her father and her uncle. And within a few scenes, I knew these guys. Like, oh, yeah. I get it. Yeah, they're brothers, haven't seen each other a while. I know what this one's like. I know what this one's like. I know what the grandmother's like within a couple scenes. Like by the time Billy gets to the grandmother's apartment in China and they're all sitting down and having a meal, I'm like, I've got everybody figured out. I know who these characters are already. And it's so good.
I don't know, because there are a couple little like dinner scenes, and I don't know if it was the one you just referred to or maybe it was a little bit further when they had another dinner. But there's this one where they're all sitting around eating, and there's like this slowly rotating table.
It was great.
And basically, it's a dynamic where you have the family blame game going on, and someone says, oh, yeah, well, Nana's here, and you left to go do this. And then the person, you left and gone to America and done this. She's like, right, but you're sending your son away. And it's kind of like, don't call me out if I can't call you. And there's just and it's that whole family tension that's like, the worst Thanksgiving meal you could ever imagine. It's like, but it's not really bad. It's not over the top. It was
played realistically.
It's just understated, like, okay, well, I'm going to call you if you're going to call me out. But it wasn't done mean. It's not this real heightened thing, but it was extremely, extremely well done.
I realize we've gone, 10, 15 minutes talking about this film and never really mentioned what exactly the plot of the film was. So I guess we should mention that. So a Chinese family does discover that their grandmother has a diagnosis where she only has a certain amount of time to live. I think it's only like a few months to live. And they all, as a family, decide that they're not going to tell her, which is a fairly common practice in the Chinese culture. The idea that if you tell the person that they're dying, that's going to actually propagate them dying quicker, as opposed to you don't tell them. They live happy the rest of their life. They don't know, and just let the family absorb that burden instead of the individual. Billy, played by Awkwafina, is living in America with her parents. Doesn't quite see that because she has enough, I think, experience living most of her life in America, and thinks, no, we got to tell her that this is only fair to do. So there's a little conflict there, a little interpersonal conflict, and then the family dynamics around it. That's the film. So, I thought it was really good. I've got a couple of little things I wish had been done a little differently. There were a few too many scenes. I don't know. Maybe I feel like I'm being very nitpicky on this, but when you've got such a film that just works on every level, it kind of makes a couple scenes stand out when I don't feel like they gel quite as well. There was several of the scenes where it's the slow motion shot of the family all walking towards the camera, and Awkwafina's right in the middle with a very steady gaze right at the camera. It was a little overplayed a few times. It kind of gave it almost a sense of a
Wes Anderson film?
A little bit of a Wes Anderson quirkiness, or trying to be a little more self-important, and those didn't work for me. When you've got such a great natural feel for the rest of the film and everything seemed very authentic, those were just a little more stylized. I just didn't think worked. But again, that's really my only misgiving from it. I thought the rest of the film worked perfectly. I will say on the quirk side, the one area that they went a little quirky and I liked was the, quote, wedding towards the end of the film. The actual whole ceremony, the reception afterwards. You've got people up there doing kind of karaoke or singing. You've got a game that's being played at the table between all the participants. I thought was really fun. Those worked for me because it kind of, I think it was really kind of a cathartic event for everybody to just kind of enjoy the time that they were all together, finally, after dealing with this little bit of this drama along the way.
And they let themselves have fun.
Yeah.
Because the whole time they've been faking having fun, but you get the idea that no, especially with that game you're talking about, they're actually having fun.
So I really liked where they went with that scene at the wedding reception as well. So,
well, I'll touch on that. I have one misgiving, which I'll get to in a second. Overall, like you, I'm positive on the film, but I have one thing that I will detract from it. But before I get to that, I'll say that something else that I appreciated about the film was, to feed off what you're talking about, that drinking game, and it's at the wedding reception. And they build to the groom is drinking heavily. And then you see this scene where he appears to be getting, and you think he's going to violently basically throw up.
Yeah.
And like, I was dreading, this is going to be played for laughs, like like a Hangover movie, and that's just going to totally derail it. But actually, the cause of him kind of crumbling right then is something completely different. And Awkwafina then kind of comes over and helps him with that. And I thought that was awesome. I thought the payoff of that whole thing was really surprising. And just because I was not what I expected, and I had this dread of where it was going, and it wasn't that. And I thought that was a really nice payoff moment with the two of them.
It was nice, I think, kind of tying off that too. I mean, somebody in our film society even made this comment afterwards that the Billy character, Awkwafina's character, the granddaughter, basically, although she's the one struggling the most throughout the film with whether or not, how to deal with this situation and not always agreeing with the family about keeping it a secret, by the end of the film, she's actually one of the stronger people, where it actually is starting to take its toll on one of her father and his brother, and then you've got the groom. I mean, it's just these people aren't. Yes, they're working really hard to keep the secret and kind of deal with the situation, but they're having a hard time processing it. And I thought that was really interesting to see. I will also call out probably my favorite scene in the film. It takes place at the cemetery where they are visiting the grandmother's passed away husband. And not only does it start with a manic crier at another gravesite where they had just made a comment about how sometimes people are paid to go be criers at a cemetery or a funeral to kind of build up this level of emotion in the crowd. Cut to that, but then you actually go over and you see the family that we've been following visiting the grandmother's husband's grave. And I know it's a Chinese ritual to work with or tradition to work with at the gravesite, but they start just having food, and they're putting the food on the grave, and they're eating some food themselves. And it's almost like they're sharing a dinner with the grandfather, which was awesome. And just even there are laughs in that scene too, because they're arguing about whether or not they should give him a cigarette or not. But it's very natural. It's like, this is how this family would totally be being here. And I just loved watching that perfect blend of tradition with a true family acting very real. And it was great. So it was one of my favorite scenes of the film. So
I'll say that, and I'll allude to things because we don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen the movie. But my one kind of false note, I guess, that I'll say that I feel like the film hit for me was I was mixed on, let's see how to phrase, I was mixed on the credit kickoff scene featuring actual footage of the grandmother. I feel, now I don't know, because, despite the fact of being able to give notes on what It 3 could be, I'm not a studio exec, have no idea. But I feel like in a way it kind of took away some of the film's impact of the ending. Yeah. And then that scene it just hit me a little wrong. And I wondered if in a way it was added to try to make it more uplifting, or it was like, well, let's put this on here so that way we have a happy ending to a film as opposed to an ambiguous ending, which we know sometimes audiences hate.
I took it as the director. This director and the writer-director made this movie based on their real situation. Right. But my understanding is that they felt like by the time the film was actually made and released, their family situation would be different than what it really was. So in a way, it's like putting up that last slide is almost like a little bit of a joke for themselves, too, of saying, look, we made this film. We thought it was going to end this way. This is the way we expected it to end. But it hasn't ended that way in real life, so we got to throw the slide up there to let it know that, we want to be true to the film and true to the story.
And maybe if that had been done like halfway through the credits or at the end of the credits, that would have worked better for me. But it just really, I couldn't sit with what I thought was the ending of the film. I couldn't sit with it long enough. And so it's not, I still like the film, but to me,
I can see
it's a little...
It's just there is an interesting backstory. I recommend anybody, after you've seen the film, definitely look up and read a little bit of the story about the real family this is based on, because it's kind of some funny anecdotes with that. So, well, it sounds like we're both very positive on the film, The Farewell, and looking forward to see what Lulu Wang does next as far as another production. And I'm very anxious to see what Awkwafina does with acting career. Does she return back to comedy primarily, or does this give her enough of a dramatic acting bug to start going down that path a little bit more? Do you think there's any award potential with this film at all here in the next few months?
I mean, maybe it could get the directed by a female, because there's all they're trying to be more sensitive to that these days for justifiable reasons.
It's technically not a foreign film, even though 75 or more % of it is Chinese, but it's made in America. It was an American finance film.
Yeah, if it wasn't for that fact, then I'd say, this is probably a shoe-in for China's entry into the Academy Awards. So maybe that, best adapted, because it was adapted from This American Life thing.
Yeah, so that could be interesting, a screenplay adaptation.
Yeah, and, who knows, maybe a best actress for Awkwafina, but I don't know if it's strong enough.
Yeah.
Supporting for the grandmother would be nice.
It'd be nice,
but who knows?
Unfortunately, I don't see any of the acting getting any real attention. Awkwafina, I think people are paying a lot of attention to her because it's a very different role and it's a serious role, but I don't know if it was one of the strongest female roles that we're going to see this year. Okay. So I'd love to see it from directing, and I love the adapted screenplay idea. That would be really interesting.
Yeah, it's so much of an ensemble piece because there are so many family members that it would be hard to kind of
hate to pick out one as just because it really does work as a unit. I think the family, the reason those family scenes work is the dynamics of everybody around the table. So,
agreed.
All right, that is The Farewell. Probably a little harder to find in places. I think it probably might even be close to being online by the time people start listening to this episode. But we do recommend it pretty strongly. It is a good film. We recommend you give it a shot. Chris, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to do our movie news, and then we'll also do our recommendations of the episode. So you're listening to Footcandle Films here on themesh.tv, and we'll be right back.
Hey, this is Andrew Moose from the Street Circle Drive podcast here on The Mesh. Interested in promoting your business to an online audience? Your ad could be right here. Consider advertising on the Mesh Podcast Network. Head over to themesh.tv for details.
Welcome back to Footcandle Films here on themesh.tv. This is Alan and Chris here. We just finished our review of the first half of the show of the films It Chapter 2 and The Farewell. It Chapter 2 we both had some real issues with and did not terribly enjoy, while The Farewell we did give some very high marks to and feel like it's a very worthwhile film to check out if you have a chance. So, Chris, let's move into some movie news while we're here together. This is the time of the show where we like to talk. Both of us maybe ping pong from episode to episode would bring up some news items. I've got a couple things to share with you today. Some news items about movies either in production or ones that are about to be released that we want to kind of pick apart a little bit. There's film festivals going on all the time. There's even one coming up, I hear, at the very end of September.
North Carolina?
Yeah, in Western North Carolina, which is really close to where we are right now, from September 27th through the 29th. That's the Footcandle Film Festival. We do encourage you to go check that out, footcandlefilmfestival.com. If you're listening to this, you're probably bumping right up against the festival date, or maybe you've passed the festival, so go ahead and put it on your calendar for 2020. We'll be talking about it plenty between now and then. But we are looking forward to a good festival weekend coming up here in a couple weeks. But anyway, the festivals I was referring to are two in particular. We had the Venice International Film Festival a couple weeks ago. Then we're just finished up the Toronto Film Festival. So two big film festivals where a lot of big films go to get some attention and get some buzz early on. Generally speaking, the films are going to be a little more in the, especially with Venice, a little more in the higher acclaim status category. Toronto, a little broader. You get a little more bigger budget films that can kind of make their way into the Toronto Film Festival and get some recognition there. I did want to mention Venice first because there were two really interesting outcomes I wanted to kind of highlight for you.
And it actually, you're doing it chronologically because it actually happened
it was first. One outcome of the Venice International Film Festival that is a film we've talked about several times on the show. And I'm sure we're probably going to talk about it at least one or two more times because it comes out in maybe 2 or 3 weeks.
I would assume we're going to review it.
Oh, yeah. We've got to review it. And that's the film Joker. Mm-hmm. That is Joaquin Phoenix in the Todd Phillips film. It won the Golden Lion at the Venice Film Festival, which is the kind of the big award.
Mm-hmm.
The initial word when it was screening in Venice was extremely positive. Then you kind of started getting some backlash of people who had some issues with it.
You know what's weird to me is it's a comic book movie having Green Book backlash.
Well, it's having very polarizing.
Same subject matter. No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. It's having, not because of like attitudes of racism. No, it's just like the amount and the intensity of the backlash that's happening around Joker. Yeah, it was like people being like, oh, this is awesome. And then it was like people just railing.
Yeah, so I mean, you're right. When Green Book first came out and was being screened at festivals, there were a lot of critics who were coming up and being, oh, this is a wonderful movie. It's so good. It's so great. And then I think it started getting more people seeing it, and more critical eyes. And then a lot of people started to realize, no, actually, this is not really good at all. Joker, I think it's got a lot of that going on right now. I think the people who are fans of this film have some very, very positive feelings about it. I think, Joaquin Phoenix's performance is getting some high acclaim.
When I haven't heard anybody detracting his performance.
No, I think the tone of the film is also something people kind of respond to, and the grittiness of it and the realism of it. I think more of the people who have some issues with the film seem to be commenting more on the messages that come from the film and just what is the film trying to say and how does that play in today's society nowadays. So that is Joker, but it did win the big prize. I mean, it won the Golden Lion. It will be coming out the first weekend in October.
That's right.
So we're about 2 to 3 weeks away from that, and we will definitely be talking about it, I'm sure, when it comes out. The other thing from Venice that I thought was just really interesting is the buzz around the film Marriage Story. You've heard about this, the Noah Baumbach film starring Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver. It's a film where you observe a splintering union, a compassionate portrait of a marriage breaking up, basically. And this film, it's at 100% on Rotten Tomatoes right now. Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson both getting a lot of acclaim for their performances. Noah Baumbach, people are saying it's like the best film he's made. So it came out of Venice with a really higher profile than I think it did going in.
Gotcha.
So it's now it was already one I was interested in seeing, but now it's definitely gone pretty high on my list for wanting to check it out. So there's some other films, a lot of films from other countries that got a lot of acclaim and did really well at the festival, but those were probably the two biggest ones that, as far as for me, kind of resonated and said, okay, these came out with some heightened awareness, whether it's Joker, very split awareness, or Marriage Story, almost unanimous praise for. Ad Astra did pretty well at the Venice Film Festival, got a lot of acclaim there as well. The King, which is Timothée Chalamet, starring as, something Shakespeare-wise. Henry V,
I think.
Got some pretty good acclaim as well. So, I mean, some movies did pretty well with it. Then we moved to Toronto. And again, Toronto is a bigger festival, or as far as like bigger budget films kind of making their way in. Let me just sum this up for you.
Okay.
I'm going to list out all these films, and there's one common thread about all these films I want to tie together. And we'll go back and hit a couple ones.
Okay.
Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, the Mr. Rogers film, starring Tom Hanks. Knives Out, the Rian Johnson film, the whodunit murder film.
Yes.
Judy, the Judy Garland story with Renee Zellweger. Jojo Rabbit, Taika Waititi's film. The film Waves, that was directed by
Trey Edward Schultz,
getting some great reviews. Uncut Gems, is that the Safdie brothers with Adam Sandler.
Yep.
Starring in it. Ford versus Ferrari, even with Matt Damon and Christian Slater. All these films I listed, even the film Hustlers with, you're going to have to give me the names.
Jennifer Lopez.
All of those films, great reviews. Mm-hmm. Every single one of them. I mean, I listed out like 8 or 10 films right there that are coming out in the next 3 months.
So it's going to be a busy fall.
That are all getting really strong reviews after playing at the Toronto Film Festival. Any key takeaways from any of those I listed? Any of those that kind of spot out? Oh, I even forgot. Dolomite Is My Name, the Eddie Murphy film. Also played Toronto. Also got some great feedback and reviews.
Yeah, it seems, a lot of times people earlier in the year, especially when things like Avengers Endgame are hitting and other things are just like, oh, this has been kind of a bad movie year. It's just a bunch of blockbusters, nothing of substance. Then comes these festivals, and then you have the end of the year kind of run. And yeah, it does seem like we're going to be pretty busy watching a bunch of films. Interesting, I'll be interested to see my reaction to Joker, because I was interested in it anyway, because we've talked about it, but just to see kind of how I fall after hearing all these other people, their opinions. Jojo Rabbit, I did hear, good things, which I was happy because I was interested to see it. Taika Waititi actually won the Ebert Director Award at TIFF as well, and it got the Audience Award winner at TIFF, so it took away 2 really big prizes at Toronto International Film Festival. No surprise if you've seen the trailer, Taika Waititi plays like Hitler. And some people have detracted a little bit because they say it just didn't, I don't know, they say it didn't quite work or something about it. They applaud him for trying this satire about anti-hate, but they say it didn't quite work. So I'm really interested to see that one for myself. So I guess, the films that I'm most looking forward to out of all the ones you listed, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, and the one that I am looking forward to that I had no idea really kind of existed and I'm most interested to see maybe would be Waves. Because Trey Edward Schultz, I've seen Creature, I've seen It Comes at Night. And those are both kind of psychological horror films. And then from what I can tell from the trailer, which is very beautiful, it looks like kind of like a Moonlight type idea. Yeah. It's very, rich cinematography, beautiful colors, kind of centering around, I think, a family or something. It's kind of hard to tell. But it just looks really surprising. So I'm really interested to see like what he's doing with this now. Yeah. And, Trey Edward Schultz is a Caucasian, and this film seems to center around African Americans. So it's just interesting to see that perspective, like what he chose to do. It's like, oh, well, that's interesting. So I'm really curious. That's the one I'm most curious about as far as like, oh, that's something interesting for that person to do. So, yeah, those 3 would be my big 3.
Well, I think it's an impressive list of films we've got coming up. I mean, Hustlers came out this past weekend, made a lot of money, and got a lot of great reviews. Jennifer Lopez getting a lot of great attention for her performance. Again, a film when you told me about months ago, I was like, whatever. Saw the trailer, didn't think much about it.
Not interested in it, but again, now you're like,
plays at the film festivals. People are saying, it's really good. Right. The Judy Garland film. Again, it's a musical biopic. We've seen so many of those, but the reviews have been strong, saying it's a good performance by Renee Zellweger. Even Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, I honestly was worried about when I saw the trailer because I still am having a hard time. Tom Hanks, I feel like it looks like it's doing more of an impersonation than truly playing the character, and I was hoping that wasn't the case from the trailer. The reviews have been good. So, again, I think we've got another strong film there.
Well, with that one, it'll be interesting for me. You brought up during our review of Farewell, is something better served as a documentary, or is it better served as taking that idea and turning it into a narrative? And, Won't You Be My Neighbor was an awesome documentary that I think we reviewed here on the show.
We did.
And I liked it a lot. They're basically taking not the whole story, but basically like a little slice of it. And they've made this movie into it. So I'm curious to see if I respond to it as strongly as I did that documentary, just because I'll be like, yeah, it was okay, but I kind of already knew what I was in for because I'd seen it in the documentary. So I'll be curious to see that.
Yeah. So a lot of great films. Very excited about the fall season. These are all ones all 11 of these that we've mentioned are ones I'm now interested in seeing. One film that I know played at Toronto, maybe not the best response to it, and probably, it's still one I'm curious about, but it's not as high on my list. Steven Soderbergh's latest film, The Laundromat. So this is starring Meryl Streep, Gary Oldman, Antonio Banderas, Jeffrey Wright. I mean, a great cast. really stacked with the actors. And it's exploring a 2015 news story behind the Panama Papers. So a Midwestern woman played by Meryl Streep, going through and learning about that situation. My understanding is it plays, it's both comedy, but it's also dealing with a real life story. I understand Gary Oldman's very kind of over the top Gary Oldman. The feedback I've got is that the tone's kind of all over the place and it just doesn't really work as well. But I know that was one that a lot of people were excited about, but doesn't sound like it really is held up or didn't come out of the Toronto Film Festival with quite the strongest feedback and response. Still one I'm curious about because I like Steven Soderbergh, but
sure.
See how that turns out.
I'm curious about two films. We'll harken back to a film festival that happened even before Venice. But the Cannes Film Festival, the winner of the Palme d'Or at that was Parasite by Bong Joon-ho.
Yeah, that's another one, yeah.
And I know very little about it, but I've heard that it's kind of awesome. And I've heard the less you know about it, the better. So I'm not even going to try to find out what it's about, but I look forward to that whenever I can end up seeing it because it is a Korean film, so it might be forever and a day before I get to see it. But I am looking forward to that one. It won an award at Cannes. I can't remember if it was Venice or Toronto, but this film came out kind of one that you said on the didn't get such a good reception note. And it's based on a book, which I have read, called The Goldfinch. That's the name of the book. And the name of the movie has Nicole Kidman, has Ansel Elgort in it. Man, have people been really brutal on this movie.
Didn't turn out very well
this is going to be an example of where Chris can't wait to see the movie because his expectations are so low.
It may actually be a good
I'm like,
viewing
you know
for
what? You know, the book was interesting. Okay, maybe. And Jeffrey Wright, I believe, is also in The Goldfinch. So, okay, maybe it's not going to work, but I still want to see it because I did enjoy the book. And let's just see what they can maybe make work.
Sure.
So,
no, I'm with you on that. I'm still interested in seeing the films, even if they're not getting the best response. And granted, we are looking at them all in kind of this microcosm of it's a film festival, all these critics packed in, everybody's kind of spilling their beliefs out online.
Sure.
So it does help kind of to skew the film a little bit. We've seen so many examples of films that got skewered at a film festival when they actually come out in wide release, people see it, they really respond well. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I guess my big takeaway from this is I think we have a embarrassment of riches going into the fall of films to be looking towards.
Yeah.
Which is nice because I don't feel like we've had that the whole rest of the year. I feel like January through September, it's kind of been like, well, you're reaching to find the films that you really are excited about.
Right.
And now from October through December, I think we're going to have a lot. Yeah. So I'm very excited.
Me too.
So, Chris, with that, since that was kind of an all-encompassing news item talking about the festivals, let's move right into our recommendations of the episode. You and I both sharing a film we think is worth checking out that we want to make sure people know about and hear about, or maybe revisit. Maybe it's one you haven't seen in a while and we just happened to stumble across it, like I did in a sleepy, drowsy state on my couch and catching back up with a film that I had forgotten all about. I'll jump right into mine since I kind of did the little lead-in, if that's okay with you.
Have at it.
So, the 1990s. It was a magical time, Chris. I went to the movies a lot when I was a high school and college student.
Okay.
That was kind of my thing. And, I dated during that time, and a kind of a go-to date would be you go to the movie theater.
It's easy. You don't have to actually talk to the person. You look at a screen.
A little bit of that. And plus, also, I think this was like the early stages of me realizing that how somebody responds to a movie afterwards is a little bit of a telling tale about how compatible we may be.
Gotcha.
So there were two films in the early 1990s that I saw many, many times in a movie theater and on several occasions on a date.
Okay.
One of them was Dances with Wolves.
Ah, yes.
Now,
is that your recommendation?
No, it's not.
Okay.
No, I still love the movie from a sentimental standpoint. It's got problems. I've seen it recently. Parts of it don't hold up as well, but it still works for me. I still like it.
Gotcha.
Now, the other movie that was my go-to date movie for a while, and this was, when was this film released? This film was released in
now, you've already recommended the Brothers Solomon, so it's not.
No, it's not that. Okay. It was the movie Ghost.
Ah.
That was my go-to date movie. This is Jerry Zucker, who Jerry Zucker was part of the Zucker brothers, who had done some of the Airplane, Naked Gun. I mean, he'd done a lot of slapstick, over-the-top, broad humor stuff. This was kind of a break. It was him by himself directing a movie, and he did one that was going to be a romance drama.
I did not realize he directed Ghost.
Yeah, it was kind of. I remember that being kind of the deal with it. You got Patrick Swayze, who up to that point was Mr. Roadhouse and Dirty Dancing and all that, trying to play something a little bit, not as macho, not as big fisted, dancing and all, just a little more of a subdued character. Demi Moore and Whoopi Goldberg. Now, on paper, this movie sounds pretty bad. Okay, just a young man's murdered. His spirit stays behind to warn his lover of an impending danger with the help of a reluctant psychic. Sounds fairly cookie cutter. It sounds
terrible.
It does. And I remember when the trailers came out and the movie was being hyped, it's like, ugh, that doesn't sound good at all. I'm not interested in this film. But I remember going, I think, on a date to see it and actually thinking, dude, I kind of like this movie. It's like, this actually kind of works for me. There's a lot of problems. There's a lot of things, if you think too hard about it, it doesn't make any sense. But I'll admit, as a romance, it's really good. It's very emotional. It has some great little bit of supernatural elements to it. There's actually some kind of creepy moments, in it. It's tense. It has a lot of buildup and drama. I mean, it actually works for me as a film. It's one of those films where I think they just kind of hit lightning in a bottle and said, all right, yeah, this could be a formulaic studio film that's just going to go straight to DVD. But it's like, no, we actually kind of got something here, and it worked, and the audience is connected with it. And I really like the film.
I mean, you're bringing the show full circle. There's no such thing as a bad idea for a movie, only bad execution.
And I agree.
And yeah, on paper, that sounds like a terrible idea, but I agree with you. It's actually well executed, and it's a good movie. Here's how good that movie is. Yes, as a teenager, and then in college, I was aware of this movie, and I was like, oh, that looks terrible. And then I saw it, and I actually want to rewatch a ostensibly a romantic movie, which is also kind of a comedy because Whoopi Goldberg plays the psychic.
Sure.
And it is just walks the tightrope. It is romantic, but it's also really funny. But it's got some cool kind of sci-fi, like learning how to be a ghost stuff that's really awesome. Yeah, so I had totally forgotten about that movie.
See, and that's why, it happened to be on like a cable thing. I was at home. I had a couple hours where I actually didn't have anything to do. Nobody else was in the house. Everybody else had gone off to do things, and I was just kind of there by myself. And I started watching it. I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember really liking this movie. And what if it holds up? I'm like, yeah, it actually absolutely still holds up. All right, awesome. The effects, some of the ghost effects, they're pretty bad. But, you just kind of look past that. I mean, it doesn't ruin the film for me. It dates it.
Okay.
It is a dated film. It is a 1990 film. I mean, it's pretty clear at this point. But, again, Patrick Swayze, man. Guy had charisma.
He did.
That was good. Whoopi Goldberg, this was a time where she could just kind of let that Whoopi Goldberg persona go and just have fun with it, and it played the role really well. Demi Moore was fine. I mean, she's not an actress I'm too big a fan of, but I thought she did a great job with the role.
Sure.
And even like as the kind of, quote, bad guy, I mean, he really, it's Tony Goldwyn playing Carl. Carl is Sam Wheat, which I think is an interesting name for Patrick Swayze's character, Sam Wheat.
Sam Wheat.
Sam's best friend or coworker, Carl, it turns out was kind of involved in Sam's murder. And he plays a guy coming unhinged pretty well throughout the film because he starts freaking out when things start conspiring against him. So, yeah, the movie was good. It was really good. And, again, David Zucker as the director, was kind of just an interesting – or Jerry Zucker, I'm sorry. Kind of an interesting story. A character I didn't remember was in the film, but actually played a part was playing a police officer that interviews Demi Moore in the film when she goes and tries to get some assistance is, he's from Office Space. He was the guy with the stapler. Stephen Root. Stephen Root has a small part as a police officer. He's actually really good. He's a very serious role.
Oh, so completely not what you
not funny. And he's not comedic at all. He's very, very serious. And so, yeah, that was kind of interesting to see him in the film as well. Anyway, I'm saying Ghost. I saw it again. I like it. It's still a great movie from that time period. So I definitely recommend checking out if you have a chance. Or if you've never seen it, just because the premise and stars turned you off, give it a shot. You actually, I think, might be kind of pleasantly surprised. Chris, what have you got for us?
So I'm going to recommend a documentary that's made its way onto Netflix. It's called American Factory. And the reason I'm recommending it is it actually ties into some of the culture ideas, or not culture ideas, but some of the exploration of the Chinese culture that we talked about with The Farewell. The idea is it is a documentary, so it's true. In post-industrial Ohio, a Chinese billionaire opens a new factory in the husk of an abandoned General Motors plant, hiring 2,000 blue-collar Americans. Early days of hope and optimism give way to setbacks as high-tech China clashes with working-class America. So my Letterboxd review just kind of threw this out as a Michael Keaton-less gung-ho. And that's, because it's not funny. I mean, there are some instances of humor, but it's kind of an example of optimism at the onset of like, oh, we're going to have the solution to open up this factory and we're going to rehire people. Mm-hmm. But then cultures just really, there are differences in how it is really a struggle to try to make things work. Mm-hmm. It's not a perfect documentary. I do have some misgivings of seemingly, with every documentary, there's an agenda, and you can kind of feel like where these people's agenda lies, where their loyalties lie. But the incriminating evidence that comes out about, the Chinese part of the equation, they agreed to have the cameras there. So the warts that they're exposing about themselves, it's kind of like they're buying into it, and they're saying these things to the camera. So it's an interesting thing, but it's just really, the global economy idea. It's kind of interesting to see, just be aware, global economy, okay, but working together can be really tough.
Yeah, sure.
So it's kind of an interesting play off The Farewell as far as cultures and how they interact. But American Factory.
That's a documentary that the Obamas helped produce? Yes,
and I forget the name of the production company that they've started, and it just so happened, I think this is one of the first things they did was this film, American Factory. And but yes, and actually, if you care to, on Netflix as well, of course, there's American Factory, but then there's kind of like a Q&A at a coffee shop, which, yes, is obviously very staged because you don't just have the Obamas walking into any coffee shop.
Sure.
But they sit down with the directors. There's Stephen Bognar and Julia Reichert, and they sit down and kind of have a back and forth Q&A about why they made this film and what their goal was, and talk about access and all that kind of. So it's an interesting companion to my other recommendation. But if you're interested in that, it's on Netflix, American Factory.
Yeah, that's one I've got queued up. I need to kind of check out at some point. So, all right, again, very wildly different recommendations, but that's always for a fun show as well. So,
sure.
So Chris, we are at the end of this episode. As a recap, we both are not big fans of It Chapter 2. Thought it was a drop in quality from the first one and did not care for it much at all. We both really liked The Farewell, though, one we do think people ought to check out. We did a little quick recap of both the Venice and Toronto film festivals and seeing about 11 or 12 films that we're now really eager to see in the next few months. And then our recommendations, American Factory documentary that is available on Netflix. And then Ghost, which you just got to find it on cable somewhere or go rent it or buy it on iTunes.
Check it out from your library, possibly.
Right, probably so. But either way, two films we do recommend you check out if you have a time and an inclination to do so. So with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up the show. But Chris, before we do, just a couple of quick plugs about what else we're doing outside of this podcast. Of course, we have the Footcandle Film Society, which is the organization that kind of helps put on this show. But we do our monthly film screenings both at the Carolina Theater in downtown Hickory, North Carolina, as well as the Newton Conover Auditorium. We've been doing the film series out there the last few months in Newton, North Carolina, holding those film screenings. And then, of course, we have our film festival we mentioned that will be happening September 27th through the 29th of this year, 2019. We have our Children's International Film Festival, which we work with the local school programs to put together a slate of short international films for children in grades 4 through 7 or 8 to enjoy throughout their own school systems and discuss. So a lot of things we have going on within the Film Society. If you're interested in what we're doing or upcoming screenings or anything else, check out our website at footcandle.org. And then, Chris, if people are wanting to talk to us about Footcandle or about any of our reviews or discussions, how should they do so?
Quickest and easiest way is to probably send us an email to info@themesh.tv with Footcandle in the subject line. You can also follow us on Twitter at @FootcandleFilm. Alan and I are also on Letterboxd, where we track or try to track what films we've recently been watching. And if you like this show, awesome. Please consider subscribing to the show on iTunes and leave a star rating or review to help us reach new listeners. If you're more of a Spotify or Stitcher or Google Play type person, we're on there as well.
Yeah, so a lot of different ways to listen and a lot of different ways to reach out and just talk with us. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up the show. Thanks so much for listening. Chris, thanks a lot as always. And to everybody else, we will talk to you next time.
See you in the ticket line.
Special thanks to Carpal Tuller for the show theme music. For more about Carpal Tuller, visit www.carpaltuller.com. You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.